Peace and blessings, family. What's up with all the daydreamers out there? Please live it. Don't sleep through this thing. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Mugs and Conversations. Yeah, let's get into this conversation right here. You see the title. You see the title, shout. Don't act like you don't see the title. So today we're going to talk about gender roles, what the man does in the relationship and what the woman does in the relationship, okay? Bring your phone a little closer to your ear so you can hear the conversation. And I've sat back and I've witnessed this conversation over a course of time. I've witnessed the conversation had amongst singles. I've witnessed the conversation had amongst married. The conversation is to be had, and it should be had. And it is an important conversation, the conversation about gender roles. It actually is an important conversation. So with that said, let me establish something. There's a difference with how single people have the conversation about gender roles versus married folks when they have the conversation about gender roles. Single people have the conversation about gender roles from a question standpoint. What does the man do? What does the woman do? Right? I typically witness. Let me insert this. This is from my experience, what I've witnessed, conversations I've sat in, been a part of, a fly on the wall, things I've seen people debate on social media, all these different things from the digital realm to the actual I can physically touch you realm, all colliding together in this one overview or perspective on the conversation of gender roles in a marriage, right? In a relationship. But I've witnessed, and this is my experience, singles have the conversation from a question. What do I do? What does he do? What does she do? How does gender roles work inside the relationship? Is it true that in typically today's society, it should be like this? That's typically how the conversation is had, is of a question in search of an answer, but it's also asked by people who have all the solutions and answers, yet they're trying to figure out why they still ain't in a good, healthy, long-term relationship. I just throw that out there. Let's keep going. On the married side, it's typically the conversation of already established. This is how it is. This is how we move. This is how we've changed over time. It's typically about what they're functioning in more so than the question, right? They're not asking, what do we do? They're making a statement. This is what we do. And to add this, the conversation is a lot more heated amongst singles, again, from my experience, from what I've heard, from what I've witnessed, the things that I've been involved in, just giving you the landscape that I see. Their conversation is a lot more heated. And it turns into a brawl more times than it does with married folks. Yes, married folks have their brawls and conversation about it and everything like that, little tit for tats about it and things of that nature. But for the most part, there's no argument. There's just an understanding that, hey, that's your marriage. That's how it works. We understand. Bada bing, bada boom. This is our marriage. This is what helps us. This is what works for us. Bada bing, bada boom. When it comes to gender roles. So the single people asking it from a question, trying to figure it out, but having for some odd reason the ultimate answer to the question that they're asking. But at the same time, it turns into a full blown out debate and brawl. Married folks, hey, it's an established statement, not a question. It is an established statement from actually experiencing what gender role looks like in their relationship. And it just a general conversation overall. Because here's my thing. The married folks that I know, that I have hung out with long-term, short-term, had these conversations with, you know what my theory is? The reason why you don't hear them going at it the way single peoples go at it when it comes to gender role conversations is because they're doing two things consistently in their marriage. Doesn't mean that they're always exceeding at it. Doesn't mean that their actions don't lack the need for forgiveness, but this is something that they're consistent at. Number one, doing what they naturally do in the relationship. Doing what they naturally do in the relationship. Insert whatever that natural thing might be. Number two, doing what they have verbally agreed upon in the relationship, in the marriage relationship, doing what you verbally agreed upon. A marriage is a covenant. It is a contract. This is the part that we miss. And I said that before to somebody and they got mad. A contract. What you think? This is some kind of business deal? Yes. Stop approaching your marriage like you're not having a business meeting and a business deal on how the marriage is going to operate. You're coming at it from this Disney World, happily ever after, lovey-dovey butterfly feelings, and it's all just flickery. That's how you're coming at it when you need to actually sit down and actually have a conversation on what are you going to do? What am I going to do? This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. Do we agree? Spit, shake on it. I do. But people are going to the altar to pledge their love to one another, their life to one another, and make these vows of for better or for worse, in sickness and health, for richer or for poor, to death do us part. And they have not established what that relationship is going to function like. You've established how you want to feel, but you haven't established what you're going to actually do. The house, the home, the family needs to function, but you have not established how the house, the home, or the family is going to function because you have not established who's going to do what inside the relationship. Because you're too busy debating on what the gender role looks like instead of sitting down with your soon-to-be spouse and having a conversation on what are you going to do? What am I going to do? Let me give you a real life example, and I'm going to use my home as the example, and I'm going to use another married couple that I know personally as an example. I'm not going to say their name, but their story rings true on multiple levels. Now, pay attention to what I'm about to say. Me and my wife chose a traditional marriage. An old school traditional marriage. I went to work, she stayed home with the kids. That's what we chose. But this is something we verbally stated and agreed upon before we got married. We knew what we was walking into, or we really didn't know because we never been married before. But we knew what we agreed upon walking into it, and we held our word with that even when it got aggravating and hard. That's the part right there. But we at least had a I do based upon what the covenant contract was between me and her. I'll work, I'll provide, I'll pay the bills, I'll ensure that I'll bring the money in. She said, I'll stay home, I'll raise the kids and make sure that they are poured into their first lesson strictly from home. We did not want to send our kids to daycare. We wanted every lesson that they got about life to come from the home first. If my wife worked, we wouldn't have been able to give them that. They would have gotten mixed messages possibly from daycare versus from what we teach at home. That's no shot at people that have to go through that. Please don't take that as a shot. That was our reasoning, and I stand upon that reasoning on 10 toes, 6 feet up, and I won't bend or fold on it. That was our reasoning, part of our reasoning really for it. But we picked a traditional model marriage, and to this point, we've actually had a traditional model marriage. It works for our household. It works for our family. It works for what we do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis in this home. Does this mean that my wife never got a job? No, because things had changed and we needed to do some other things in the house, or rather for the family, for transportation. So guess what my wife did? She said, babe, I need to get a job. No problem, babe. Go out there and get a job. She went and got a job. And she worked, and guess what? I had to stay with the kids, but not stay with the kids. I still work, but she was working nights. I was working days. When I come home, I had to feed the kids. It wasn't like I abandoned the aspect of the kids being fed because she went to work. No, things actually started to we had to change up some things. Why? Simply because the needs of the house changed. But we verbally talked about it with each other as we was going into each new level, each new, like y'all like to use, season of our lives. Because life changed, different things are starting to happen, the kids are getting older and their needs are actually increasing, then guess what? Our covenant contract needs to change in on how we sit down and talk about what we are going to do as the husband and as the wife. Now, let me give you the flip side of it, right? Married couple gets together. This is a true life story for people that I know, but this is for a ton of people that I don't know that have been married and gotten a divorce for this very reason. They get married. They say I do at the altar. The only conversation that they've had so far is how they emotionally want to be treated and things of that nature. Make me feel butterflies, support support me when I'm down. Clap for me when everything's going good and I'm making progress and everything. Support me through this. And I mean, and those are good conversations to have. 2 years into the marriage or so, the function of the home and the family now comes into question. The very conversation that they should have had before they said I do, they didn't have when they said I do. And now it rears its ugly head. And now neither one is willing to give or take. Neither one is willing to sacrifice for the other because they came in, number one, assuming each other knew the role they will play from the functionality part of the home, the house, the family. They came in assuming that. And because they assumed it, they never had the conversation. And because they never had the conversation, they're holding each other to a covenant standard that neither one of them agreed upon. This is how many of you are approaching your so-called long-term relationship. You're approaching it from a covenant that never was actually verbally agreed upon because you never really talked about the terms and the condition within the covenant because you don't want to look at marriage like it's an actual contract agreement between two human beings coming together trying to figure out how they're going to become one. How can you figure out how you both become one if you never have the conversation on what each of you are going to do to actually bring it together the way that it needs to be brought together? And this is the last part I'm going to say about gender roles, and then I'm done because I think I'm going to start rambling, and I don't want to start rambling. This video is long enough. Here we go. I get it. There are general things males do, like, want. There's general things women do, like, and want. I understand that. I get it. Studies show that. Whatever. Do not approach your marriage based upon the general consensus of what men and women want all the time. You cannot base your relationship, your marriage, 100% on the general consensus. You cannot do that because we still are individuals. A man is still an individual. A woman is still an individual. She and he have likes, dislikes that grow and change over time. I'm not the same person my wife met when we was in high school. I am different. The things that I invest my time in and look at and I actually have a hobby for and an affection for, they have changed over time. The way I see life has changed over time. Same thing with her. She is not the same woman. I cannot dwell with my wife according to the general consensus because then I'm not married to my wife, treating her like my wife. I'm married now to multiple women, treating her like multiple women from the general consensus. And then you wonder why. The Bible says to a man, dwell with your wife according to knowledge of God's word, but also knowledge of who she is. She is an individual. She is not like the other. Stop treating her like such. I am not like the other. Your husband is not like the other. These men out here are not like the other. Stop treating them as such. But we've generalized everybody in this box that you now have looked at him from the viewpoint of every male in society for all their flaws and all their goodness. And most of the time it's for all their flaws that you cannot see the diamond in the rough amongst the others. So in conclusion, let me give you some practical advice on establishing gender roles in your relationship, especially if you're talking about getting married. Talk about it. Conversate with your spouse, who is soon to be your forever. Talk with them about the role, the function that you will play in the relationship. Don't just talk about how you want to be treated and taken out and bought gifts and all this other stuff, and you don't want to be cussed out and all this. I get all that, but actually talk about how you're going to deal with money. Who's going to do what in the home? If something breaks, the yard work, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry. Just don't sit there and say, well, if it needs to be done, we all don't do that. Establish the role. That's the point. Don't just say, well, if it need to be done, yeah, good. Okay, all right, you can assume that. And you'll walk away looking like boo-boo the fool when something doesn't get done because you're assuming your spouse is going to do it because it needs to be done. Sit down, talk about it, establish it. Just don't be vague. You're about to spend the rest of your life with this person, right? If you are to hold to your word, that is. You're about to spend the rest of your life with this person. Do not go into this covenant, contract relationship with vague terms, but also go in with a forgiving heart, knowing those specific terms won't always be met every single time. And it's going to need forgiveness from both to both. Nobody's perfect in a marriage. Much love and respect. I know I went on a tyrant, but I hope the ending at least blessed you guys. Much love and respect. Y'all be safe out there, man. This your boy Sleep. Peace.